All right, we're back. Episode number 61. We got the Q&A Ask Daru section episode. And today I'm going to go over questions from my Instagram. So we have about roughly 10 or 11 questions that I'm going to get through, but I'm actually going to go deeper into detail on these. So just bear with me. But before we do that, I have to shout out the sponsors. Go ahead and check out element.com. Element is an electrolyte drink that I've been utilizing for my triathlon training and also with my athletes to get them or maintain their electrolyte balance with their training. It has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium in a small, little, easy-to-go pack that you can pour in your water. So make sure you check them out. Also, Vivo Barefoot, vivobarefoot.com. That's the minimalistic shoe that I've been rocking a lot with the YouTube and also throughout my training just in general. I wear it a lot in the weight room when I'm doing my lifts. Really good to increase your full foot functionality, your strength, your intrinsic muscles of the feet. So I highly recommend that if you're looking to enhance your abilities to have a better support system. So vivobarefoot.com, use the discount code Daru Strong. Now, let's get on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast. Daru Strong Podcast.
Let's go. Mind over matter. Put your mind somewhere else and keep going. That little voice in your head is trying to stop you from getting to where you want to be. Be successful and keep moving forward.
With your host and world-renowned strength and conditioning coach, Phil Daru.
All right, guys, so the first question of the day, and this one is going to be a longer answer because it goes through my origin story, right? So Braden from Instagram wrote me and asked me, how would you describe your origin story? So when you're talking about your origin story, I'm going to go out and say this. I'm going to start from the beginning, from when I started to really take control of my life from a training perspective, from an understanding of what my purpose was and what I wanted to do from a goals and an accomplishment standpoint. So when I was younger, we'll start at 4 to 6 years old, and I'll make sure that I'm not going to go through my entire youth. But at the age of 4 to 6, my mother was getting ready for the fire department. So she's the only woman firefighter in the department. So she needed to get ready. She needed to train. And the only way that she knew how to do that was to run up some stairs and lift weights and do calisthenics, right? So at that time of my life, since I was 4 to 6 years old, I would help and be by my mother's side, training her, getting her ready for this particular test that she had to take for the fire department. Now, what that helped me establish was a coach's mentality, right? I was able to lead even when I was a young little kid. I understood hard work ethic. I understood, being able to be consistent, understanding how to, find a goal, reach for that goal, and work and maintain those habits to allow for that goal to be accomplished at the end of the day. So it started there and kind of rolled forward from there. I've always played some type of sport, whether it be football, basketball, baseball. I did martial arts as a kid, Kempo karate to be exact. And so from the time of that, when I turned 8 years old, I was able to start playing recreational football, where I met one of my best friends who's actually behind the camera right now. And the goal for me there was to establish my abilities, right, as an athlete. So it's the first time I've ever been able to hit somebody on a field and really go through some type of hard contact against another individual that was my size. So it was good to do. It let out a lot of aggression. I do believe that a lot of kids and children in general need to be able to let out aggression on the field at some particular time of their life. Now, I'm not saying go hit your head against the wall or cause brain damage at a young age. What I am saying is that you need to get them involved. If you're a parent, you need to get them involved in some type of sport where they can get their aggression out, where they can utilize their strengths and basically show their abilities from an athletic standpoint, and also improve on their body awareness, improve on the ability to move well and move often. And that's going to help a lot of health issues down the line. Okay, that's also going to get them prepared for life, because that keeps them consistent, that keeps them understanding hard work ethic, that allows them to have the ability to be a part of a team, right? To be responsible, to have goals, and to achieve those goals. So I do highly recommend you get your children into sports at a very young age and do a lot of different sports, not just one. Make sure that they do many. Okay, so fast forward then, we go into high school. Now, high school, my main goal, honestly, was to get ready for high school football. I'm in South Florida. This is the way of life for us, right? The major thing that we want to do as young athletes in South Florida is make it to the NFL. So for me, the goal was to get properly prepared physically to get ready for my high school career. Now, with that being said, I had no real knowledge of what I wanted to do. I just knew I needed to get stronger, I needed to get bigger, and I needed to get faster. So I found all the books that I could read, all the magazines, muscle and fitness magazines, bodybuilding encyclopedia. I even looked into old West Side templates and notes that they took when they were working out in the old West Side times. And that's where I really got connected with an individual by the name of Joe DeFranco. So what I did was I took a lot of the articles that Joe wrote and I put it into place for us in my garage. So we would lift weights and let me just say this, I didn't have a full weight system, right? We had a barbell and I don't even think I had a bench. We were just doing floor presses because that's all we had. Luckily, it correlated over because of the fact that, with the floor press, that does help with football pressing power or pushing power. So needless to say, we're doing the right things. We didn't even know it, right? Now, with that being said, we get into my high school career, doing very well, progressing slowly, getting to a point where I feel comfortable with, my position. I was playing linebacker, and my goal right there was to solidify, my abilities as a linebacker in South Florida or in just the entire state of Florida. With that being said, I was in a school that was predominantly not too worried about sports, right? A lot of times you would have guys selling drugs in the middle of school, right? We weren't rich by any means. We had not a lot of money, my parents, I'm saying. So with that being said, as a product of your environment, I hate to say that, but sometimes that does happen. You end up doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, right? You end up being a person that you ultimately didn't think you would want to be, and not thinking anything of it because you're a young adolescent kid. But at the same time, it costs you a lot when you make it down the wrong path. So fast forward my junior year of high school, and I went through a circumstance that not a lot of individuals usually go through. I was getting recruited by Division I schools, had a bright future ahead. Was definitely thinking about going to Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. Full ride scholarship was there on the table, could have been there. But I made a wrong decision one day and cost me a lot. It still costs me to this day. And ultimately ended up getting charged with an assault and ended up getting 21 days in the detention center and then ultimately getting direct filed as an adult. And I was 17 years old in the county jail, in Broward County Jail, sitting in a cell contemplating on what I should do or what I can do next. But the one thing that never crossed my mind was that it was over. The reason why I said that was because I knew in my heart that this wasn't the place for me. So I made a vow to myself and to God that this would never actually happen again. Through the grace of God, I got out of that situation. We ended up getting some probation, worked my way through probation. At that particular time, we had to get out of the high school that we were in. I had to transition and make my way to another high school. And the good thing about that was that high school was really well known for their football. And I was with some high-level guys at that time, my senior year. So I'm playing as hard as I possibly can to try to make it and to dig my way out of that hole, right? To rise out of the flames like a phoenix, like I like to say. And I was able to have a solid senior career, but it was a bump in the road, I would say, and it didn't necessarily need to be there because of that wrong decision. And decisions that you make can ultimately dictate the course of your life and the actions that you go about doing further down the line. So the one thing I would say to anyone is to make sure that you make the right decision and think forward when you do those types of things. It's a chess match, it's not checkers. So we got to make sure that we have multiple moves ahead. All right, now, moving forward, I'm in college, I'm at Alabama State University, I'm playing football, and I'm doing what I intended on doing, right? And at this particular time, I got a call from my parents, and my father ended up getting in a car accident, and my mother developed an autoimmune disease called lupus. And this has been attacking her for more than 10 years now, and we didn't know it. So basically what ends up happening is your organs start to attack itself, right? And everything starts to shut down on you, right? So slowly she was getting more sick, and my father couldn't work, my mother couldn't work. My 10-year younger sister was just about to start in high school, or middle school, I should say. And so I needed to take care of the family. And at this particular time, the NCAA wouldn't allow us to have jobs or get any money. So I'm there, I'm pursuing an exercise science degree and going through it and, playing in the games and everything else and having fun. But in the back of my mind, I knew that there was my family hurting for money, and not being able to live the life that they wanted to live. And that was eating at me each and every day. So it took me a minute, and I ended up making the decision, going into my head coach's office and laying out my scholarship and leaving Alabama State to go back home to make money for my family. So cancel the scholarship, come back home now that my family moved from the section or the area that we were living in, which wasn't a great area in Broward County, and moved up to a small town called Port St. Lucie. And at this particular time, I was boxing on the off season and doing things as far as from a combat sports perspective. I was getting back into martial arts. And so I needed to finish my degree and I needed to get a job, but I also wanted to compete. So when I got to Port St. Lucie, I looked around for some boxing gyms, and you had Buddy McGurk's gym that was in Vero Beach, House of Champions, but that was pretty far from me and I didn't have any money at the time. So I had to look around that was even closer, and just so happened to have an American Top Team affiliate school that Dean Thomas actually ran. And so this fast forwards to the whole Dean Thomas and me meeting. And if you want to check out the podcast with episode 1 about us meeting, that's a pretty interesting story. But long story short, I started fighting and competing in MMA. Was getting my degree, finished up the degree, then also went and started doing some personal training on the side. Now at the time, I have a felony charge, right? So I couldn't actually get a job at a Gold's Gym or an LA Fitness or any other gym that was around. They wouldn't take me. So what I had to do was hustle from the get-go. It's nothing to me because I've done it all my life. But I used to take people and sneak them into Gold's Gym. Used to charge them $20 a session. Work them out, and I would make my money on the side, and I would go ahead and spend that money on groceries for the family. Now, with that being said, I was also an amateur fighter doing really, really well. I ended up getting a job because of the manager at the gym that I trained out of knew a person, and I was able to get a job there at a Snap Fitness, a 24-hour gym, which I ultimately was able to work my way up into a trainer-director job for 2 different gyms. And I'm about 20 years old at the time. I learned my way through that. I learned how to manage people. I learned how to put together sales scripts. I learned how to put together program designs for a general pop, working with 75-year-old men all the way down to 13, 14-year-old females. And that gave me a large array or a wide range of understanding of how to train people. That was a big developmental stage in my career from a coaching standpoint. Fast forward a little bit further, I ended up opening up my own facility at the age of 22. At the same time, I had just turned professional in mixed martial arts. There was a lot of focus issues that were going on at that time. I didn't have a large amount of time to train because I was getting my gym opened up. I was getting business orientated so that I would actually make some more money and help my family and myself and start to develop a brand. And so from there, I developed a gym called Daru Fitness Performance, or DFP. And I was training boot camps, and I was, working with some of my teammates at the time. Mind you, I'm 22, I'm still a professional fighter. I had an 800 square foot facility. It was no bigger than this office almost when it comes down to working space. And I got the job done. I was able to build the gym from 12 members all the way up to 65. And then from there, we had to obviously move out of that space and move into a 1,900 square foot building, which in turn got me to 11,000 square foot facility within the year. So built very fast. And the one thing that I would say to any coaches out there is to slow down. Take your time, because I went too fast, I grew too quick, and I wasn't ready from a business standpoint to handle the amount of flow that was coming through that gym. So I would say slow your roll, take your time, be patient, but be persistent. So with that being said, 11,000 square feet, I got over 200 members, possibly around 200 to 300 depending on the time of the year. I had a full functioning gym. I had strongman equipment, powerlifting equipment. We had 7 to 8 trainers in there. I had a full cage in there. I had a full ring in there. I had mat space. I had everything. But I didn't have the ability to run the business here. But what I did do was put myself in the position to level up. So I started to learn business. I started to learn entrepreneurship. I started to learn how to run a branded business when it comes down to the gym. Fast forward now to the year 2015, where I got the job at American Top Team. I was a strength and conditioning coach for them for 5 years. And the first day that I went there, I ended up coaching or working with Dustin Poirier, Hector Lombard, King Mo Lawal, and throughout the week, Tecia Torres and a couple other athletes. But thrown into the fire very quickly and had to learn how to train those elite level fighters very quickly. And I found out how to do so very well, which allowed me to understand the programs and the systems and the methodology that I put together today that helps not just myself, my athletes, but the coaches that I mentor. Over 750 coaches that we have in the mentorship program. If you guys want to check that out, check out the link in the description for that. But the systems that we put together was based upon sweat equity. It was based upon the time that I put in, the effort that I put in, and the trials and tribulations, the ups, the downs, the wins and the losses. And now we've solidified our abilities to get athletes ready to perform at their highest when the time comes, okay? Fast forward 5 more years, opened up a gym in Pompano Beach, where it's right next to the gym in Coconut Creek. Started working with the athletes there, putting together this podcast, and now we are in a space to where we are growing exponentially. We have a growing YouTube channel, and we also have a great team, which I'm very blessed to have and honored to be a part of the situation. So that's where Daru Strong came about, because strong means many things. For the most part, strength can be a major role in someone's growth and potential to be better. If you're not strong mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're not going to get to where you want to be ultimately. So make sure that you're leveling up and getting stronger every day. That's the story so far. We'll see how it goes in the near future. Next question. All right, so changing gears to the next question. Now this is more of a sports performance question. So how do you schedule a week with a fighter, grappler, and balance their training with strength and conditioning? So for the most part, I've done videos on this on the past. So if you check out my YouTube channel, I have like 3 or 4 videos on this, but I want to go over it a little bit here. So the first thing you want to do is we need to find out their schedule, right? We need to find out what they're doing on a daily and weekly basis. We also want to work on, or we want to see exactly when they start their camp and when they are able to put time and effort into strength and conditioning. So again, the start of camp, finding out their schedule for the entire year, and then also the fights that they have lined up for that year. Now, sometimes that's not possible because guys take fights on short notice. So that's why I use the condensed conjugate model, because it allows us to be ready at all times. Now, I have videos on that too as well if you want to check it out. All right, you also want to look at their intensities of training per day. And that's going to help us understand and correlate over the intensity of the strength and conditioning sessions. All right. Fourth, after that, we want to program the training around the skills training to consolidate the stresses, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. All right. So what that means is that we want to make sure that our high days stay our high days. We don't want to go high day on, or a high effort training session in the morning and a low training session in the afternoon and then do it again on the next day, because every day you're going to get some type of high intensity. You'll never actually be able to recover or have a recovery day. So I like to make sure that if we are going to have an intensity day solidified, we're going to do that one day as a high intensity day, and then the next day be a lower or mid to low intensity day, so that they can recover for the next day being another high or medium to high day. So again, I go into detail on the whiteboard on the YouTube video, but you get the gist of it, right? Fifth is we want to use objective and subjective indicators to measure out fatigue. So objective indicators would be, an HRV monitor, right? Or an RPE type scale, or not even RPE, would be an AMRAP scale, right? So you need something that is going to give you objective data to showcase how fatigued an individual is, right? That can be heart rate monitoring. Again, that can be HRV monitoring. Anything there that's going to show you from a numbers perspective where they're at and where their parasympathetic system is, where their nervous system or central nervous system is. Subjective indicators can be used all day long, right? They can be used just by talking to an individual or asking them what their rate of perceived exertion is on each particular training session, and also how they're feeling throughout the days, all right? And then we want to implement autoregulation to keep progression going. So autoregulation is what I've been able to do in the most efficient way possible to keep fighters consistently training without overtraining them. And you're going to get that if you're a coach or you're an athlete, and you're going to go into a day that's scheduled at some particular time way beforehand. And that's good to do. You need to have a schedule, and you need to make sure that you organize your plan of attack. But that plan of attack needs to be, you need to have enough flexibility to be able to call an audible when necessary. All right, you're not going to always come in the day fresh and ready to go. So you need to back off when you need to back off, so that each day after that can be progressive. Okay. All right, next question. Luis Torres, 7903. If you don't win in your prime, I say from 18 to 25 years old, can you start winning past that with great training? So your prime, like that, it's a very wide range, right? So in fighting, I honestly think that a prime age for MMA is somewhere around 30 to 32 years old. And I say that because it takes a long time to solidify greatness in all these training demands, right? So it takes about 10 years in the game to really hone in and to be a true practitioner, but also be very efficient as you work through your ranges and work through those methods. So for me, I would say 30 to 32 for MMA. And obviously when you're talking about, field sports, that could be, way younger, obviously 18 to 24, whatever have you. In the NFL, I think the life expectancy of an NFL player is 3 years, right? So that is dose dependent. Now, hell yes, you can still be great, and you can still, win titles, and you can still win championships after your prime. It takes more consistency. It takes a smarter work ethic, not a harder work ethic. It takes, a little bit more help on the physical preparation side, taking care of your body, eating well. You can't do the things that you've been doing at a younger age. Your nutrition has to be on point, your supplementation has to be on point, and your sleep has to be on point. So all those things from a recovery standpoint is going to be necessary for you to level up. Now, the good thing that you have on your side past your prime is you have wisdom, right? You have skin in the game. So you can take that, utilize that, and that could be working to your advantage with those younger guys that don't have the experience. Whether it be in the cage, ring, field, court, whatever have you, you know how to put your energy in certain situations and be efficient, more efficient than those young, up and coming, in their prime or very eager to win than those guys that know how to take their time, pick their shots, be systematic, have a strategy, and go after it. So old dogs still have a lot of fight in them. Okay, next question. Advice for young fighters. Now this is from GRXG_picking. Advice for younger fighters. I'll say this again, is take your time, be patient. If you have an amateur career, make sure that you get enough amateur fights under your belt to where you feel truly confident to go to the next level, because that's when it truly counts, right? Losing fights as an amateur doesn't mean anything. You want to lose some fights. You want to actually go the distance in a lot of your fights as an amateur, because when you turn pro, there's no going back. So you want to get all that out. You want to make sure that you are confident in all the strengths in what you're trying to accomplish. We're talking strength training, your strength work, your power work, but also your skills, right? Whether it be for MMA, I don't know what sport you're talking, but whether it be for any combat sport, you want to be as efficient as possible before you go into the pro level, because all those other pros are efficient, right? So make sure you take your time. That's one of the main things I would say. Another thing is don't overthink, right? Stay in a framework or a mindset that is based upon what you're learning at that particular time. When people get scatterbrained or you try to do too many things at once, this goes in life in general, but for young fighters, I knew, because I fell victim to it, was I was trying to do or be like everybody else, or trying to put myself in a position or fight like this fighter or fight like that fighter, but I never fought like myself. And so finding your rhythm, finding your pace. It's okay to emulate a certain move or to look at a favorite fighter that you like and like their style, but you have to be able to mold and adapt that style to your own good, right? You have to be able to take what you see, but put it in your own way. And that's really where you struggle in the early parts of your career, is finding your way. So take your time, find your way, find your rhythms, find your style, and then you can move forward. Okay, next question. Luke_Quan what adaptations to a training program would you make for a pro wrestler, WWE, etc., compared to an MMA fighter? I would definitely work on more hypertrophy training, because they're more of an entertainer. So what I mean by that is they have to look the part too as well. So doing functional hypertrophy work, right? Making sure posterior chain is built up, hamstrings, glutes, things like that. And then would work on some pump work, right? Biceps, triceps, big chest. But it's not going away from them being athletic. So again, like my guy Joe DeFranco works with Triple H. I know that he has a lot of things correlated in there. He works a lot of strength and athletic development with him, and Stephanie McMahon too as well. But he also implements a lot of hypertrophy work, right? A lot of muscle building work, and that's going to be good, because that person needs, again, like I said, look the part and be able to perform well when the time comes. Next question. What are my top 3 counter movement and non-counter movement lower body plyometrics that I like to use, and for what reason? So this is Leachy_Wilkinson. So my top 3, I don't have like a set 3, but I'll give you these. So obviously the easiest one would be a box jump. That's either counter movement or non-counter movement. Really the reason why is because, especially with fighters and just athletes in general, they're getting beat up a lot, right? Their body's getting beat up. So when you're able to produce force from the ground and then as you jump up, it lessens the force being generated down on the joints. I like that just from a performance standpoint. Obviously, you're increasing rate of force, you're increasing the stress shortening cycle depending on if you're counter movement or non-counter movement. It works on lower body explosive power because you're having to recruit maximal motor units and fire efficiently with high force but high velocities. So definitely a box jump. The one thing that I will say is, again, and I don't have to probably re-emphasize this, but don't go to a box that is too high to where you're not even actually jumping on the box, you're pulling your knees up as high as you possibly can and turning it into some crazy deep squat position or whatever. You want to be able to jump and land in the same position, okay? So just know that. All right, the next one is going to be a seated box jump. And the reason why I like that for a non-counter movement is because that does work with creating rate of force, right? So being able to create force from a static to dynamic, and that allows us to kind of situate the body in the right position. Especially with the young athletes, we can put them in that position and teach them how to create force first after they've had the ability to absorb force. So that's another good exercise that I like to use when you're talking about progressions of plyometrics. Okay, last one is going to be hurdle hops. The reason why I like hurdle hops, this is more for reactive strength. This is also could be good for one-step jumps too as well. So if you got basketball players, if you have young kids, and you also want to compete a little bit too, I found that that's fun to do with a lot of my guys, and they want to see how high they can jump up, and again, you just go after it, right? So it's low risk, high reward, and I would say it's very easy to do, right? You don't need a whole lot of room, you don't need a whole lot of equipment, obviously. You just need a couple of hurdles and you're going after it. So it's easy to progress too as well. So those are my three. Seth_Healy writes, what test can you do to determine or gain an indication of your rate limiting factors in endurance? Okay, so I would highly recommend you go check out Evan Picon on YouTube and also check out his website. I've had him on my podcast a couple of times. You guys can check out the past episodes, but Evan really got me into understanding rate limiting factors and utilizing what I'm going to talk about right now. So the main thing that we use is NIRS technology. So that's near infrared spectroscopy, and that's going to show us whether you're utilization limited, respiratory limited, or delivery limited. And basically what that means is if you're utilization limited, you have an inability to utilize oxygen efficiently. If you have a respiratory limitation, it's your inability to take in oxygen and let off CO2 efficiently. And then your delivery is delivering oxygen to the working tissue. Usually with delivery limited individuals, you're looking at guys like myself, or was like myself because now I'm an endurance athlete, but the highly explosive power athletes, those are the guys that you lack a little bit of that aerobic capacity per se, right? If you want to put it in those old bioenergetic terms, right? A utilization limited individual is the exact opposite. Those are the guys that actually do have the ability to deliver that oxygen, but they don't utilize it as efficiently. And that's going to be a hindrance when you're trying to do short bursts of energy, right? When you're trying to do short sprint intervals and recover fast. So we want to work on that. And then the respiratory limited individuals are usually it's more of a biomechanical situation where they cannot utilize diaphragmatic breathing efficiently, and they do not know how to blow out that CO2. So usually it's a respiratory, as far as, you know, being able to take in that oxygen and learn how to breathe diaphragmatically to bring down that stress response, but also let off CO2. And a lot of my fighters have this issue because of deviated septums and just not understanding how to breathe like that. So there's a lot of problems when it comes to that, and that's where we find the ways to accomplish that through training mechanisms and methodologies that I use based upon what actually Evan has showed us. So make sure you check him out. But when it comes down to monitoring or checking it out, what we use is a near infrared spectroscopy. So that's a NIRS device, and I use a Moxie monitor. That's just another it's another company that uses NIRS technology to measure out, right? So monitoring using infrared light and the infrared light is non-invasive, so you can do it in the gym, which is very good because a lot of times I don't have access to a lab, and when I do, we're gonna get lactate threshold, we're gonna get all that stuff, but you know, for the most part, you're in the gym. So non-invasive measure of heme compounds in skeletal muscle, right? So you have You have total hemoglobin and myoglobin that is measured out. And that can give us a clear indication through delivery and utilization limited individuals through that oxygen, right? So with the NIRS can be used to determine the concentration and oxygenation status of the working muscle in real time, right? So using a basic ramp test on an assault bike is something that I found to be most efficient. So what that means is we use an assault bike. What we'll do is we'll strap the Moxy monitors on working muscles. So that'd be the vastus lateralis and maybe the opposite side delt. And we'll do a ramp test starting from, let's say, 200 watts, starting at 4 minutes. We rest a minute, then you repeat that another time. You rest another minute, you bump that up 50 watts. So every second round through, you bump it up 50 watts. So for instance, you have 4 minutes at 200 watts, rest 1 minute, 4 minutes at 200 watts, rest 1 minute, 4 minutes at 250 watts, rest 1 minute, and then again, 4 minutes at 250 watts, so on and so forth. Then from there, you would read those blood markers and find out and identify what their limiting factor is, right? If they start off right out the gate and their utilization or their oxygen or SMO2 drops dramatically, that's how you know that they do have a great ability to utilize oxygen, right? If it doesn't, then you have that issue there that you have to try to work around and work through, especially off season or off camp. That's where we really like to hone in on building up and getting rid of those rate limiters, or at least minimizing those rate limiters, so that once we get into a camp scenario, we can work on our compensation strategies and we can work on enhancing what we're good at. Okay. Next one, let's see here. All right, next question. This one comes from Chris Tough.cw. Endurance training off camp, especially for the high days. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put this in combat sport form or MMA because that's most of the athletes that I work with. But this can be utilized anywhere. When it comes to seasons, though, that gets a little tricky. But if you're talking about an in-camp, he says off-camp. So with an off-camp, on your high days, my main focus, depending on the athlete really, is going to be building up an aerobic base, right? But if it's a high intensity day, if it's something that we're going to do concurrently with the training session inside the weight room, we're probably going to go into more aerobic power or an explosive repeat bout. So with the explosive repeats, we'll be using prowlers, sleds, incline treadmills, assault bikes, and hill sprints. And we want a good burst of energy. So we want a good acceleration. We want to utilize, that alactic response. We want to utilize high force outputs. We want to do it quick and fast, but we also want to make sure we have minimal rest. So incomplete rest followed by hard efforts. So it's a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. And we're going to do that consistently for a standard amount of time. And that standard amount of time can increase over weeks so that you can increase or progress them going forward. Another thing we will do is aerobic power intervals. That's going to be a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1, or I should say a 1-to-2 or 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, where you're going to get your aerobic range or your heart rate range in that high aerobic zone. And then you're going to back off to where you somewhat recover. You're talking around 50% of max heart rate and then ramp back up again. Right, and you're going to stay within those zones. The goal here is to stay aerobic, though, so we don't want to get too far into those highly acidic or lactate zones. We want to maintain our aerobic zone, and that's going to be good throughout the entire time. This one you want to kind of do this from a duration standpoint. You're looking anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes interspersed with those intervals that are highly, aerobically intense, and then back down to a lower aerobic zone. All right, and this can be progressed over time throughout the weeks, but off camp, this is primarily our focus on the high intensity days. Okay, Seth_Healy, how can you train intramuscular coordination? So intramuscular coordination, firing patterns of fibers within an individual muscle, right? So basically having the ability to fire on all cylinders with the interaction of nervous system to muscle coordinated in, right? So if you're looking at it from that, you have intramuscular coordination and intermuscular coordination. Now, intramuscular coordination is going to be your isolated movements. You're looking at it from more of like a bodybuilding-esque style, right? You want to be able to have that mind-muscle connection. And so the way you want to work that is through tempo lifting, right? A lot of times, in order for your body to kind of understand where it needs to fire and have all those muscles fire, or I should say fibers fire at the same time to elicit a movement response, we got to make sure that we put the time and the effort into the movement. So we definitely want to train those tempo lifting in single joint movements under lighter loads so that you don't compensate or use other muscles to move the weight, right? This is true isolation here, bodybuilding style. Another thing that you can use is a triphasic training method, and you would enhance the efficiency of each exercise through those 2-week blocks, right? With eccentrics, isometrics, and concentrics. So those are 2 ways that you can definitely increase your intramuscular coordination. Okay, next one and last one. All right, last one is expertise_diet. This guy's pretty funny, but cool guy. So I'll answer your question. You have made programs for jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA, and any thoughts on programs for kickboxers? Now, I do actually have a template for kickboxing. It's actually more for Muay Thai, but yes, in the future, we are looking at maybe doing something with kickboxing. I know that it's been a pretty solid demand for it. A lot of questions, a lot of people asking me about it. So possibly within the next year or 2, we'll probably put one out. But the next program that I have coming out is called Hybrid Prime, which is going to be an all-encompassing training program, not just for athletes, but anybody wanting to train like an athlete and work on their strength, their power, their speed, their endurance, and some hypertrophy. So all-encompassing, a conjugated concurrent model that I utilized through my condensed method. Again, thanks again for your questions. If you guys like this one, let me know. Make sure you go ahead and share the podcast. We're trying to grow this podcast. Also, shoot me an email or a DM for anybody that you want to see as far as the guest goes. So I'm reaching out to other guests. We'll see who we have on next. But again, thanks again for watching. I'll see you again next time.